This episode is all about accessing your power, changing your mindset to see infinite possibilities, and doing less to achieve more. It's a recording from a She Made It live webinar on learning to love yourself just as you are, a conversation between Elle Zimmerman and transformational thought leader Arvat McClaine. I took so many notes during this episode because it's just one amazing insight after the other. Trust me when I say that you won't want to miss it. Keep listening. Hello, everyone. I want to welcome you to this very special live webinar called Learning to Love Yourself Just As You Are. My name is Clara Molson, and I'm really excited that you're here, and I'm excited to get to be part of it too. If you've been to one of these live events before, you know who I am. I'm Elle's creative collaborator. I get to work with her on these events, on the She Made It podcast, and some other really fun projects as well. So we're just delighted to have you here and so excited for our guest, Arvat McClaine, who I will be telling you about shortly. And the last thing I want to share before I introduce our guests is that Elle is going to be offering a really special opportunity for how to work with her at the end. That's very exciting. So hang on until the end because we have fun things coming up. So now I would love to introduce our guests. Elle, if you don't know her, is an inspirational coach. She helps women become the best version of themselves. She actually started her career as a professional actress and then pivoted to building Curtis Zimmerman, her husband's keynote speaking career, working with corporations to build training programs. And now she is the host of the podcast She Made It, along with being a certified Enneagram coach. Arvat McClaine is a transformational thought leader, author, and coach who creates courses, and we're so thrilled to have her today. Her journey began, as you will hear, in poverty, abuse, and depression, but she has this incredible journey of transformation of becoming a self-made millionaire, an author, and helping people to access their full potential and love themselves just as they are. And I want to just say that this is actually such a neat topic because it was sort of how we ended our last webinar with Ashley Walters. And so now it's such a gift to be able to dive in on the most foundational piece of transformation, which is self-love. So I would love to invite Elle and Arvat to come on screen now and share their stories with us. We're really happy that you're here.
Hello, and thank you, Clara. You are such a lovely host. So pretty and such a great way to start our conversation today. So first of all, welcome, Arvat. I'm honored that you're here. I'm really excited about this conversation. And just to get us started, where are you calling in from? Where are you zooming in from today?
I'm actually in Richmond, Virginia, and I do want to ditto what you said about Claire. Just so beautiful, and that was just a wonderful introduction. And thank you so much for having me here today.
Yes. And you know what's really funny is that now the tornado sirens are going off in my neighborhood.
Oh, wow.
Good thing they're just an emergency text, not a real thing. So, yeah. So, so today, I want to jump in and just have this conversation. And for those of you that are joining us and listening in, so I do a podcast, She Made It, and She Made It is about a woman's journey to whatever making it is. Making it can be actually making something. I talk to a lot of creative women. It could be making it, meaning a level of success in life. And it can just be making it like I have that inner confidence, that inner love, and I feel like I've made it. So whatever making it means, that's the journey that we take on the podcast. And I just love the ability to sort of like really dig in and try to understand a woman's journey from where they start to where they are. And Arvat, you've just so graciously offered to kind of give us a peek into that in your life. So
yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the reason why I felt like this was such a valuable topic, because I speak to women, I speak to corporate executive women, entrepreneurial women, I speak to moms, a lot of different ages, whether they're young moms moving to next stage of empty nesting. And a common theme is this sense of unworthiness, or this sense of second guessing, or this sense of almost like identity, like who am I? And if I don't really like myself, how the heck am I supposed to love myself and then others love me? And I find that women are just like a little mindset shift away from freedom. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of the core and the theme of your journey. And so I guess maybe just to get us started, you want to just kind of give us a little bit of the journey, sort of how you have landed where you are. I know there's a lot in that story, but maybe kind of give us some background on you.
Yeah, so you're right. There's a lot in the story.
Yeah.
Lots of twists and turns, but indeed, I did start off in a place of just feeling lack, limitation, struggle in my life. As a child, I was in poverty. I was sexually abused, physically abused, and just overall depressed throughout my total child life. And I never could figure out, like, why would God put me here just to suffer? And in my early teenage years, I actually tried to commit suicide by walking down in front of a bus that, these buses would speed through our neighborhoods. And I knew if I walked out at a certain time that bus could not stop. Like it would be impossible for the bus to stop and it would just hit me. But lo and behold, the bus stopped and it stopped on a dime. And I just remember the look on the bus driver's face, like, what just happened here? And I often think about, wonder what that bus driver was thinking. But but for me, what I realized was that I had just witnessed a miracle and that miracle was for me. And that I was here for a reason. I was purposeful, that God did love me. I didn't know why I was here, but at that point, that's when I believed that there was a reason and I would never doubt that again. And I would find ways to move forward in life. And
Arvat, how old were you at that time?
Yeah, I was in the 7th grade. So I would say like maybe 12-ish when that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like throughout the years, I've had perspective shifts. And each one allowed me to get to the next level. And so I think that perspective shift allowed me to feel like, okay, just endure, just hold your breath in and endure. And then eventually I had a different perspective shift that allowed me to actually see value in my struggle. And then I would say more recently, instead of just seeing value in the struggle, but really appreciating the struggle and recognizing that was all designed for me so that I can be in this place at this time in my life.
Yeah. I mean, a lot. Yeah, that's a lot. And I want to go back. First of all, thank you for sharing that. And I want to go back to that because no matter what age you are, you could be 12, you could be 40, you could be 65. I have spoken with most, and I will say mostly women who are in that place of despair. Like, this is all I know. This is all that feels normal. And I know that it doesn't feel like it's something I want to keep moving forward in. Like, how can it be different? That hopelessness. And I guess the moment that you had of stepping in front of the bus and that stopping, I guess, how did you keep reminding yourself of that moment? Because I hear often people say, I don't see any different. I don't know how it can be any different. And what if they don't have that earth-shattering, earth-shaking, what you call a miracle moment? Because you did talk about then, as you had that sort of like pinnacle moment, then there were paradigm shifts, but there was this awareness of those happening. So can you give any insight to the person who doesn't have that one moment of what you're calling miracle?
Yeah. So at that time, of course, that's all I knew. But in hindsight, looking back and just really reflecting on life and really processing these things, I realized that really first of all, I'm going to say feeling unworthy, it seems almost like a human condition there are not many of us that have escaped that feeling. And I think that it's because we are not aligned with who we really are. And you mentioned that so many people question, like, who am I? Who am I? And it's a knowing that we're not living into who we really are. And somewhere along the way, we became separate from divinity. We see ourselves as separate. And I'm going to say God. I use God and universe interchangeably, but whoever you identify with as being the creative force, the omnipotent, the omniscient, whatever that creative force that runs through all things is, I realized that we're all a part of that divine. And when I recognize that everything I see, everything I am, that flows through me, then that's when I'm at a place where I know that I am loved. Not only am I loved, I am love itself. And so really for me, that's the biggest paradigm shift, is to realize that you are you are made from the particles of infinite creation. You are love itself. So that's the biggest paradigm shift, I would say.
Yeah. And what about the person, I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here. What about the person that can't even believe that? Mm-hmm. Not necessarily believe in a God or a higher power, but can't believe they're so trapped in that kind of lack of self-love, but like, how do they see freedom in that?
Yeah. So I really like the song that you had playing in the beginning when it came on, Free to Be You and Me. But really, one thing that makes all the difference is the use of our imagination. I think that's the one huge thing that separates us from all other creatures, is that we have the ability to imagine something different. And so even if we can't see it for ourselves, we can at least imagine it. We can put it in our head, like, what if this, or imagine this. And while I'm on imagination, it's a little bit off task, but the other day I saw a sign on the highway and it said, imagine a world free of cancer. Imagine a world with no cancer. And so I was like, I had never thought of that before. And so that caused me to start imagining all kinds of things. But the point is, we can use our imagination to access anything. So if we can just start opening up a little window where we can imagine something different, imagine feeling better. And I think all of us, even though we forget, like I say, we can feel separate from divine. We forget that we know how to access love, and we know how to access happiness. We know what it is. We know when we feel it. And so just to cause yourself to feel that just by imagining it.
Yeah. And it's a decision to seek different too.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Yeah. And you talk, because you and I had a conversation before today, and you talked a lot about how we are told, like how we're supposed to live, like that life is supposed to be hard. And it's sort of like, if you don't struggle, it's not worth having, and hard work values. And so how do we unlearn those things? Because you say, like, we are more than everything we've been told we are, and capable of creating lives that are both successful and joyful. But it's getting beyond we're more than everything we've been told we are.
Exactly. So one thing that I would encourage is really to separate yourself from groupthink. Now, I know we all want to participate in what everyone else is doing, but a lot of times groupthink is the exact thing that's keeping us stuck and keeping us in a box. And so to really start separating ourselves from groupthink, just because everyone says blank, does it have to be true? And you can just start questioning that. And I remember, I'm going to say maybe like 7-ish years ago, I had noticed that everything that I heard, like on television and, church, like wherever you go to a meeting, people will always say, I know everybody's struggling right now. And I just kept hearing that everyone's struggling right now. And I hear that also during the whole coronavirus pandemic. Like I always hear, we're all having a hard time right now. And
Yeah.
I understand why we say those things, but do we have to be struggling, you know? And so when I kept hearing this, everyone's struggling right now, I was like, well, I'm not. And so I started saying, well, why am I not struggling? And then the feedback that I was getting was, you know, like if you just read what's out there, they'll say, if you're not struggling, then you're not living. And I'm like, well, I'm enjoying my life and I'm not struggling, you know, so why not? What is that? And my mom is probably watching, but I'm gonna have to put her on the spot because one time she was talking to one of her friends on the phone and, you know, I could kind of hear what they were saying. And I guess the person was saying, you know, how are things going? And my mom was like, fair to middling, trying to make ends meet, you know, that type of thing. And so when she got off the phone, I said, what's wrong? And she's like, huh? I'm like, what's wrong? And I'm like, why are you struggling? Why are you only fair to middling? Why are you trying to make ends meet? What do you need? What, you know? And she's like, oh, I'm fine. Everything's good. And so I'm like, well, why would you paint a picture that you're not? And I think we do that so often and we don't even realize that we're saying, oh, it's hard or I'm struggling or, oh, the day I've had. But just to stop participating in the groupthink and start literally slowing things down and thinking for yourself, being present in the moment. And in this moment, am I okay? Mm-hmm. And usually in this moment, you really are okay.
Yeah. And it's the really stopping to hear how you're talking to yourself.
Yes.
What are the beliefs you're just repeating over and over and over? And where are they coming from? Just like the question of imagine a world with no cancer. Mm-hmm. Like it's almost hard to imagine that. And we do the same thing to ourselves. It's like we script ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you go ahead. Okay. I was just going to say, I actually did an experiment with myself probably like 20 years ago now. I set look, this is before cell phones. I had an egg timer and I just set it at random intervals. And whenever the egg timer would ring, I would have to think about what am I thinking right now? And I tend to think of myself as this loving, kind, benevolent person. But okay, those thoughts weren't all that loving and kind. And
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Like almost like not just the thoughts that we repeat, but almost the unconscious thoughts.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
That are like underneath. Interesting.
Mm-hmm,
yeah. Yeah. So when you say we're more than we've been taught, you talked about sort of repeating phrases and catching our thinking. And you also talk about something that we all have this magic to sort of tap into the magic that we all possess.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I think, again, that goes back to recognizing that we are a part of the divine. And, you know, when I say universe or, you know, the very term universe, uni meaning one, verse, song. So it kind of speaks to the oneness, the harmony of us all, and it runs through all of us. And a lot of times we think of ourselves only as what we see when we look in the mirror. You know, what can I do? What can I bring to the table? You know, that type of thing. But when we recognize that it's so much more to us than that, that our energy field spreads from here to eternity. Like everything I do in some way is affecting someone else and everything else all at the same time. And so tapping into that. And one of the stories that someone said, an analogy that I've loved and ever since I heard it and I've co-opted it as mine is when we think about years and years and years ago, if you wanted lights, and it was dark outside, it was nighttime, you had to light a fire. Mm-hmm. And it took someone coming up with, you know, how to exactly wire circuits and things in order to get electricity. And so it doesn't matter who you are. If that circuit is wired correctly, if you flip that switch, you're going to get lights. Mm-hmm. And so, but the point of this story is that everything is already here for us. We just have to know how to access it. And so one of the easy ways to access your magic is to really tune into your feelings. And so like you kind of mentioned, sometimes your feelings are so low. And when you're in a low space, that literally means that you are unaligned with who you really are. You're unaligned with this highest part of you. And so, like I said, we do have the ability to imagine anything. And so we can imagine feeling better. We can imagine raising our vibration, being in a higher place. And that is the access point to tapping into our magic. So having that imagination, expanding what you see as possible, because everything is already here for us. Like so often we think we have to go out and get something. We have to, struggle and work hard and effort and push and force to get it. But it's already here. But we just can't see it because we have all these blinders on and all this group think, all of these paradigms that we've grown up with. And it's nothing wrong with any of that. But there are easier ways to access the type of lifestyle that you would absolutely love to live.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just to sort of like connect some dots. So I'm hearing you say that it's really about being mindful of what you're saying to yourself. What are the messages that you were given as a child growing up that you've just adopted without really, really thinking about them. And then it's about, I think, the decision for better, deciding I want better. And for you, it came in the near miss of a bus. That was the moment where you knew you were destined for something bigger than that. And for others, it might just be being tired of feeling bad and the decision to, I want different. And like you said, I love how you said when you feel so low, that is an indication that you're not living your best self, your best life. But then to begin imagining possibility. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I always say too, because, I have a teenage daughter and I went through this myself. I think all women tend to look in the mirror and see everything that's wrong and hone in on the part that's, they don't like. And I try to encourage her and others to flip. Okay, catch yourself being critical, but then quickly replace it with what is good, what is right, what is beautiful, what is working.
Exactly.
Because the group tends to pull us down into the struggle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so often we try to solve problems from the mindset of the problem. Mm-hmm. So we look at everything that is wrong and then we try to fix it. But when we're looking at things that's wrong, it brings our vibration down. So we're like, oh, this sucks. And how can I come up with something great? And
yeah.
And again, it's nothing wrong with that. But an easier way would really just be to raise your vibration, raise your feeling level to a higher vibration. If that means go out and play and have fun and then think about, okay, what would be great? What would I love here versus how can I fix what's broken? And just start imagining something different and living into that vision of the different versus the fixing what's broken.
Right. That's really good. And you even talked about the mindset, which is like all in our head and our ego. Whereas some of the things you're talking about are more like the imagination is like a little bit more of like our heart or intuition. It's like it's the knowing, it's not the thinking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a question because self-love is kind of like a buzzword, more self-love, self-care. How do you define self-love? And you've talked about a lot of ways to sort of shift mindsets that are real heavy and low and negative, but how would you encourage somebody to really cultivate a love of self?
Yes. And so you actually hit upon it a couple of times because I think the way that we've been taught to think of self-love is to think about, okay, well, what are you good in? What sets you apart from other people? Where do you shine? And then love on those things. And those things are wonderful things to love on. And indeed, we should love on those and feel appreciative and in deep gratitude for all the wonderful things that you already possess. But really, when you're loving yourself from that space, that's actually conditional love. You're loving yourself conditionally. And so we want to move to where we are loving ourselves in an unconditional way. And again, I think for me, anyway, that would be just recognizing that you are part of the divine. And everything that you see around you is a reflection of you. And if you can see anything out there that's beautiful and love worthy, then that's you as well. And so just really to recognize that you are this, you are it. And in that feeling, then that's when you can have self-love. And when you love yourself like that from that space, you automatically love everybody else as well. And you love everything else as well.
Yeah. First of all, I love the conditional self-love versus the unconditional self-love. Like if we're only loving ourselves for what we do and what we're good at, that's not complete. And I wrote something down earlier that you were talking about. I think there's a humbling to not being so important. And I don't want that to sound wrong because we're all incredibly important and valuable, but there's a pressure, I think, that the world puts on us to produce, perform, to, be influential and have followers. And so it's also a little bit of like, I'm worthy, I'm lovable just as I am. And seeing beauty, seeing positive, seeing, the beauty of the world around us and accepting that as part of ourselves. I used to tell my kids, if they were like complaining about something about themselves or in a bad place, I would say, God, don't make no junk.
Exactly. Exactly. And it is actually that love, that flow, paying attention to the beauty around you. It is that energy that is the energy of creation. And it is the energy that draws to you things of like kind. And so when you are focused on loving yourself and loving people and loving the things around you, you draw all of that right back to you. And so that's the secret to not having to work and struggle and force and effort and push. Because when you're doing those things, you're actually saying you don't have it. It's out there. It's something that's not yours. You have to work for it. But when you're realizing you're a part of it, you are it already. And then lifting your vibration to that place where things of similar vibration attract each other. And so when you are in a loving field, everyone can feel that. Everyone can feel it. And the people who are instrumental in helping you to get to where it is you want to go, they'll just show up. The ideals will just show up for you. It's like I said, it's already here. We're just not recognizing it because we have our blinders on. So there's no such thing really as, this ideal, if I find the right ideal, then that'll make me $1 million. It can be any ideal. It can be any ideal, but when it comes through you, through the flow of love and the vibration of energy, positivity, just that type of thing.
So I think I'm going to save this question for the end, but I'm dealing with my son. I'm going to throw him under the bus like you threw your mom under the bus. He won't listen to this, so we're good. He's struggling with a lot of these negative feelings, but he's cynical. So what you're saying, I totally hear, I totally believe, but there's a cynicism that's stopping him from even allowing that open to imagination, to beauty, to so I don't know the solution to that question because I often talk to women who are just trapped. So maybe we'll save that for the end because you also said something about, unless you want to say something right now about that.
Yeah, I'll say something about that. So a lot of times, especially when it's our loved ones, we want to choose for them.
Ooh, Yeah, I've been called codependent, so too many times. Yeah. So yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Note to mom.
Right. And so every person goes through their own journey. So especially when you come into this realization, like, oh, we are the world and I can just love myself and raise my vibration, then you want everyone to do that.
Yeah.
But the truth is you came to it in your own time. Yeah. And they will come to it in their own time as well. And the key word that you said earlier was decide. Mm-hmm. And so at some point, your son, just like everybody on the planet, will decide that this is what I want. I want something better. They'll start asking that question, who am I? And when you ask a question, you're going to start getting answers. And so him making a decision, that's going to be on his terms and when he's ready to make a decision. And each moment in our life is for us. So whatever he's going through is for him. It's to help him to move into a space where he's going to be his best self. And so when I say, I realized at one point when I was going through the struggle and all that, and then I realized, I can endure. And then my next phase was, well, because of those things, I'm very compassionate and I'm kind and I'm strong. And so I came up with like a list of all the great qualities that I developed as a result. And so my brother caused me to question that. So I said to my brother, had those things not happened, then I wouldn't have been this kind and compassionate, etc. My brother said, no, you were always those things. You just had veils covering you.
Oh, you have a smart brother.
Yes, I
do. Good job, Mom. I know you're watching. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yes. Yeah. So so it's just the veils. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So thank you for that parenting advice. Yeah. That was really helpful. It's hard though, when you see family and loved ones struggle, that's hard.
Exactly.
But the reason I was going to kind of leave that for later and what I want to go back to is you threw out millionaire, because I know that you had this youth of struggle and you said, these layers and layers of paradigm shifting. But you also created incredible success. You're an author, you had a business, but then you also I'd love to go through that part of the journey because I want people to know about your book and what you do, but also you made very interesting choices along the way that I think would be helpful for people to hear.
Okay. So actually, in becoming a millionaire, I actually did it the old-fashioned way, and I shouldn't say old-fashioned, but old for me now. But I did it the way we've been taught, which is just to work hard, give it your all. And that's what I did. Now I worked around the clock, 24/7, working, and feeling like I just didn't know if I could continue. So every day I would just say, God, please just send me someone to tell me something. Because I didn't have anything outside of work. All I did was work. I didn't have any friends I didn't spend any time with friends. I didn't spend any time with family. I missed, my nephews and nieces growing up. I missed everything because all I did was work, around the clock. And when at one point, and it was actually in 2001, I came across this wonderful book called The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. And this book was by Deepak Chopra. And I remember the book, I was just like, yeah, it's cute, but it doesn't make sense for the real world. And one of the laws was do less. It was the law of least effort. Do less and achieve everything. And I was like, makes no sense to me. Deepak, come on. Live my life for a day and show me how you can do less. And so, however, one thing about me is if something is intriguing to me, I won't slam the door on it right away. I'll just go, how is this possible? If it's possible, show me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but the rest of the book, it was enlightening enough where I decided to make this a part of the training program. So every single new employee that came through, they had to go through this book. And I went through this book with them. So in the process, I went through this book over and over and over and over again. And it just kind of stuck with me. And so in my lifetime, I thought I had to work hard, struggle, force, effort. That's what I thought I had to do. But just the principle of doing less and achieving everything, I really started to get it. And I actually just stopped. I actually haven't worked since 2005. So I just stopped working. I went and laid on the beach for 3 years.
I want that.
Yes. Watching the sunrise and set just about every single day. That was the highlight of my day, was to watch the sunrise, watch the sunset. I watched the waves come in and go out. I watched the trees. I watched the animals. And in that, I just became a totally different person. And I remember coming back to Richmond, to my home, and putting myself back in the same environment. And people are like, who are you? Because I totally wasn't responding to things the way I would normally respond. So normally if there's some crisis, I'm like, let's fix it.
Yeah. Yeah. That work.
Yeah.
The wrestle. Yeah.
Yes. And so then I would be like, interesting.
I do have a question though, and I'm sure people are wondering this. How did you do that? Like logistically. So you're running you're 24/7, you've got this $1 million business. And yes, your mindset shifts. I love how you taught people exactly what you needed to know over and over and over. So we talk a lot about changing our thoughts and how we talk to ourselves, but how did you leave your business and go away for 3 years? Because I'm sure many people would like to do that.
Okay. That was a blessing. I just shut the business down and did that.
So you just made the choice. Yeah.
Yes. Just decided. And what I realized was, so when I would go there, I was in a certain mindset. And then it's like when I would come here, if I stayed home for too long, I would go back into this place.
Yeah.
And I remember interviewing someone, and they actually were from New York and they had just moved to Virginia. And so they described Virginia and the peacefulness of Virginia and the ability to see the sunrise and the sunset and the moon in the sky the same way that I was describing Barbados, which is where I spent 3 years. And I was just stunned. I was like, okay, they're seeing here what I saw there. Why can't I see that here?
I love that.
Yeah. And so then I realized it's not a place, it's a space. And shifting, learning to shift the vibration to where I can hold it no matter where I am. And it takes practice. Like I practice feeling good about things. I practice being non-judgmental, which is a huge practice for me. But noticing that whenever I'm judging something, to come back at it with love. And whenever I'm looking out into the world, to look at the world in love. And so it's so easy for us to say everything that's wrong with the world, everything that's wrong, but that's not helping anything. Doesn't us.
Yeah. And also one of the things that you've said several times is the great example was when you said, I open the book, I'm reading the book and I read this, do less, achieve everything. And rather than slamming the book and deciding no and saying it's either or, it's either this or that, it doesn't feel like it can be that, you allowed it to be still a possibility.
Exactly.
So being open. And then you also talk a lot about inquiry. Like you really allow yourself to ask questions of yourself and with no clue of what's coming from it. But being open to it. Mm-hmm. So those are just great reminders for those of us listening, because you talked about it's a practicing, it's a being open to the possibilities. So yes. I love how the Barbados description was the Virginia description yes. for someone else.
Exactly.
Yeah. Do you enjoy sunrises and sunsets in Virginia now?
I sure do. Yeah. I make sure I get out there to watch the sun, at least the sunrise. I don't always see the sunset, but I see the sunrise just about every morning.
Oh, I love it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it goes back to what you were saying when you heard your mom on the phone about I'm doing, is blah, blah, blah. And then really, no, I'm doing pretty good. Mm-hmm. But it's how we're framing it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes.
Tell us about your book. Or your books?
Okay. So my books are really a part of this in terms of doing less and achieving more. Mm-hmm. Because it didn't occur, the book I have, that's an adult book, is called When Black Women Speak, the Universe Listens. Mm-hmm. I didn't even have a vision for writing the book. As a matter of fact, I was going through a period of time because I had returned from Barbados back to Richmond. And I'm like, now what? So I really didn't know what to do with myself. And I kind of busied myself with, going back to school. And I don't know, but I felt like I wasn't doing anything. And so I was feeling some kind of way about that. I'm like, I feel like I should be doing something, but I just felt like I wasn't. Which later on I realized that really wasn't true, but that was my perception at the time. And so I went away. I actually went to Antarctica, and on the way back, I bumped my head.
Well, wait a minute. Why Antarctica?
Okay, so I just had a goal to visit every continent. And so Antarctica was the one that I had not been to. And my husband
Isn't it cold? Isn't it really cold?
Yeah, but when we went, it wasn't as cold as one might think.
Okay.
Like, the temperature was only was 32 Fahrenheit degrees, which really wasn't that bad. But of course, they say that's due to global warming, etc. But yeah, it was the most beautiful trip I've ever been on. Oh. Yeah, the sights were just amazing. But while I was there, like on the way back, I bumped my head really hard. Now I feel like I might have even had a concussion, but I always say I bumped my head and woke up into a new life, because when we came back like January the 2nd or something. And so when I came back, I just immediately started writing this book. I hadn't had any forethought really to write it. I just remember I was driving down the street and I was just looking at how beautiful everything was. And I was really on my way we had recently built our dream home. And it's it's still in Virginia, but it's a little ways away. And I was driving, I was like, wow, everything's so beautiful. And I was just feeling so wonderful. But then I saw like the cotton fields, like we passed cotton fields on the way. And then I started like thinking about my ancestors and, how hard they struggled. And I literally was there, like seeing the sun on their back and just the pain and hardship. And then I was like, wow, I'm so far from that space. And I remember how I got there. Mm. And so I said, maybe I'll write it down. And 4 weeks later, I had a book.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it poured effortlessly out of me. And I feel like it was a gift given to me that I am to now give to the world. Mm-hmm. And so the book really does talk a lot about like stepping into your highest potential. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing about the book, because I wrote the book in, I think, 2017. And since that time, I probably read it, maybe 20 times. And every time I reread my book, I learn something new.
And so what's so fascinating about that is I work with authors, usually like thought leaders like you who have a book, and most of them never read their book, which is fine. I just find that fascinating. And then you keep learning.
Yes. So I just think it's so amazing. And again, I feel like it was gifted to me. And then last year, during the midst of COVID, again, really no forethought about writing a children's book or being a children's author. It was just a set of circumstances that just opened up. And the next thing you know, I had written like 4 children's books. And then I had no idea, like, how do you get the illustration? I didn't know anything about publishing it or anything. And I just had the question, like, well, how do you do this? And then I opened up my Facebook page and there was a person that says, hi, I'm a children's book publisher. And I'm just like, what? And so, but again, these books, my children's books, one is actually called Through Her Own Eyes. And it's Tavra's journey to self-love. And the other is At Least a Million Ways. Tavra imagines her possibilities. And the others are yet to be published. But the point is, they just came to me as gifts from the universe.
And are they sort of like the children's version of the first book? Are they totally different? Like,
yeah. So all of these stories are actually parts of my life. And the difference is that Tavra, her name is Tavra. Well, my name is Arvat, so that's Tavra spelled backwards. Tavra is learning these life lessons that I didn't learn until I was an adult, because I didn't learn to love myself until I was an adult. And so it tells the journey to self-love from a child's perspective, but she gets to learn it as a child. And the same thing with At Least a Million Ways. So in this, she's imagining her possibilities. And one thing that I think most of us do, whenever we have some type of issue or anything that comes up, we'll say, well, it's either got to be this or it's got to be this. And if this doesn't work, then it's like, well, I tried.
yeah.
But one thing that I've learned is my mind is limited. This part of me is just so limited. And yeah, I may can think of a way or two, but there are at least a million ways to do anything and everything. And so I don't have to be limited by only what comes into my brain. I just open myself up to allow the flow of the universe to flow through me.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, I go back to that billboard. Imagine a world with no cancer. Like,
yes.
it's like busting beyond that group think again.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And so, but one of the things you shared with me when we were talking before is that you have found that the books are having a great impact on adults, and you're getting so much feedback from adults. So
exactly. So sometimes, hearing it from a child's perspective, because I think like the book about Through Her Own Eyes, the journey to self-love, like you say, so many of us are in that space where we just don't know how to love ourselves. Like, what does that even look like? And it often goes back to our childhood. And so a lot of times, I think this book is literally tugging at the heartstrings of our inner child. And that's the feedback that I've gotten from the book. It's like, wow, this book really nurtured me and nurtured my inner child, and really providing a platform or avenues for people to really start loving themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I just want to share something that made me think. I remember speaking to somebody and recently and just sharing like how I got really emotional about something, and I got really kind of sort of panicky about something. And a dear friend who knows me very well said, "How old are you?" Like, where is that? Because it didn't seem like a logical feeling for what was really happening. I mean, not that our feelings have to have logic, but how old are you? And it was so helpful for me to realize, again, those old stories, those ways we were raised, things we were taught, even with no bad intention from our parents. So that's really, it was helpful for me to be able to tap into that part of me that was still young.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I want to re-emphasize about telling yourself a different story.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times when trauma happens, the story that we have about it is not a story that empowers us. It's a story that takes our power away.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we can come up with a way in our brain where this is an empowering story, then that changes the ball game for us. And I know for me, I felt like I didn't have any power. That was my storyline. I felt that my wings were clipped, just painfully shy. I never felt like I had the power to have anything. I didn't feel like I could stand up for myself. I couldn't even imagine what I would look like as an adult because I just didn't have a voice. I didn't have a voice to make the abuse stop. I didn't have a voice to, ask for anything that I wanted or needed. Just painfully shy. And, coming out on the other side of that, what I realized was how that was for me is because I really realized that in a space of being powerless, what do you want most? You want power. You want to be powerful. And so in the turning around of the story and realizing how powerful I am and wanting to tap into more power is what has allowed my field to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and recognizing that I can tap into the power of the divine. And had not that happened, perhaps I would not have even been searching for a way to, at that time, I thought protect myself. But now I don't even think in terms of protecting myself, but I think that a lot of stuff that we think of as traumatic and was bad and we have to overcome it, it really was set up for us to tap into our power, into who we really are. But by us putting it in a negative slant, we close off the possibilities of what lessons that could have had.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the victim versus how is this empowering me to, yeah. Wow. So as we kind of wrap up, I want to give people the opportunity to ask you some questions. Okay. Before we jump to questions though, I do want to share with people how they can get a hold of your book or learn more about you or engage with your content.
Oh, yes, definitely. So my website is arvatmcclaine.com and my name is spelled ARVATMCCLAINE. And I'm also at all other outlets, Facebook and Instagram, also at Arvat McClaine. And then my books can be found on Amazon.
Awesome. And we'll put all that in the show notes and we'll send an email out following. So we'll have all that too. So,
okay, great.
Yeah. And just because I just want to let people know that as part of being on the webinar today, and because I do think this is such an important topic, I'm going to be offering resistance breakthrough clarity calls. So we'll have that in the note. It'll be a free call that you can just kind of connect with me, free coaching call for like a 30-minute conversation. So I guess, Clara, if you want to pop back on and we can see if there are any questions.
Yeah, so we have a couple we can get started with, but I want to give instructions for anyone else who would like to ask Arvat or Elle a question. If you go to chat, you can just type your question in directly there. And while we're waiting for some other ones to come in, the first question I have for Arvat is, how can you tell the difference between operating from a pushing or working too hard place versus a place of self-love?
So that really should be in my brain. I'm seeing it as a very easy distinction because one is hard and you're working in a place of separation, lack, limitation. You're trying to get something that you don't have. You're trying to get it and bring it to you. Where in self-love, you're just in the flow. Like you're loving what you're doing. And in any moment when you don't love what you're doing, you stop and you go maybe do something else, go fly a kite. And then come back from a space of love and then continue what you're working on.
I would love to add something to that, Claire, if it's okay, because I'm a very body-oriented person, having been an actress and a dancer, singer, and I feel it in my body. Like I can feel like this kind of like gripping, heavy sort of tightness on my chest, my stomach, when I'm pushing and grasping. And when I'm not, it almost feels like I'm not doing anything. It's like almost, it's so easy that because I'm used to the gripping, I'm still learning how to let that feel okay. Yeah. So for people who are body types.
Yeah. and that's such a good point about body types, because I think it is so important that we start allowing ourselves to feel love in our bodies. So a lot of times, like even when people do affirmations, they'll just say the words, but they're not embodying it. And so you want to embody the feeling. So just to say, I love myself, anyone can say that. But what does it feel like in your body? And to start in just grounding that feeling in and feeling that more often, and just keep, again, practicing feeling that feeling.
Yeah. And even when you say feeling, it can or doesn't have to be emotion. It can just be tension or a lack of tension or a temperature or, yeah. Next question.
I know we are getting really close to our time here. So I'll give a few more minutes if any other questions come in. But as we are waiting for that, I'm going to go ahead and put the link to a resistance breakthrough session here in the chat if you want to go ahead and schedule yours. So we have another question here. And it says, what a powerful conversation. Arvat, thank you for being so transparent. Do you have a morning or a day routine that you could encourage others to try to set the tone of their day?
Good question.
Yes, it really is. Let's see. So what I started off doing is doing daily affirmations. And so I was never the type of person that was kind of like in terms of meditation. But I do think it's extremely important to have that quiet time. And for me, my quiet time was in nature. I feel like when you're in nature, it just opens you up. You just start recognizing yourself out there. And it's a game changer. So quiet time, being in a space where you can actually hear. So we often are just focused on our own chatter that's in our mind and in our brains. But when we can calm that down, and even if it's just trying to listen to the sounds of, maybe the crickets or the birds or the wind or the leaves, listening to something else. And that's what allows you to start hearing that your higher self starts speaking to you. So I would do affirmations and I would walk while I'm doing them. And I would keep saying the same affirmation over and over again until I could feel it in my body. Like I felt like that thing. So if I'm saying I radiate love like a bonfire, then I would literally just keep saying it until I feel my entire body radiating love out. And I see myself everywhere I go, just radiating that love. So affirmations. And then, of course, I believe in really whatever turns you on, right? But music is often a great way to go in terms of getting your body moving. One, where you can wave your hands in the air like you just don't care. But also sometimes just raising your hands up just to be in an awareness of how magical and majestic this world really is. Start giving your attention to those things. And let's see, I think being non-judgmental, that one is key, because we think that our judgmental thoughts are good. So, for example, if someone throws litter on the ground and you think, oh, that's just so terrible that they would litter. Like, we kind of think that it's good to have judgmental thoughts, but every thought that you have is moving through you first. So every time you're judging someone else, you're also judging yourself. Your body is taking that in. So instead, to focus on love and to really recognize that every person and everything is a part of divinity. And even though what may be going on might not look right to you, it's just because they're not connected. They have those veils on. And the more veils that they have covering, the less they look like they're part of the divine, but they really are. And it takes us to be able to see the divinity in the next person. And when you're radiating the divinity, when you're seeing who they are, it helps them to see who they are as well. So in every thought that we have, to kind of shift it, catch yourself, change it to a loving thought.
Arvat, that was perfect. That was so helpful, so beautiful. And as we wrap up, because it is time, I want everybody to put their hands in the air like you just don't care. And I want you to say, I radiate love like a bonfire. Woo! Thank you, Arvat.
Thank you so much. I so enjoyed being here today.
Yes, so wise. And again, we'll send all the different ways people can keep in contact with you and get your books. And just thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you to everybody who joined us today. And radiate like a bonfire. All right. Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of She Made It. Our goal is to reach as many women as possible through this podcast to inspire them to find their truest, most creative selves. And we need your help. Apple Podcasts is way more likely to put our show on other people's radar if we have reviews. If you've enjoyed even just one episode of She Made It, we'd be so honored if you left a review on Apple Podcasts or iTunes. It's easiest to do this through the Apple Podcasts app on your phone, and if you're not sure how, just go to elzerman.com/review if you need some instructions. Thank you so much in advance. We cannot wait to hear from you.